Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 24 hours. We have lots of very interesting updates. Sometimes we have a lot of terrible updates. To understand what's happened during the 1st of February and what kind of events finished and happened by the morning of the 2nd of February is good to discuss everything once again. And I'll remind you that this terrible situation of the 1st of February started with the Russian massive missile strike that took place in the southern part of Ukraine and in the eastern part of Ukraine. First, let's discuss the situation in the southern part of Ukraine. According to information we have, and I'll remind you that yesterday in the morning the Russians attacked the territory of Odessa, and for example in this video we can see the consequences of Russian missile strike, and as a result of this missile strike the entire building was almost completely destroyed. So we are talking about the Bristol Hotel, and this is the first picture of the consequences of that attack. And the Russians, and more precisely the Ukrainians, are saying that as a result of that attack a significant number of officers and it's diplomatic missions, some representatives of different countries, of different diplomatic missions were destroyed. So this is the video with a very good quality that show us the consequences of Russian Iskandar strike. When taking a look at this building from the front, we can see almost no damage, but if we take a look at this video from the sky, when we see that at least 25% of the building was completely destroyed. Once again, the sources are saying that there was something like a meeting between maybe French representatives with Ukrainian officers, maybe something else, but obviously the Russians were trying to destroy the building and they managed to do this. So that was the first attack, and these are the consequences of that attack. Another important events are coming from the central part of Ukraine. I'll remind you that yesterday we got lots of updates of missile strikes in the eastern part of Ukraine. There were explosions in the settlement of Mirgorod, there were explosions in Akhtirka, there were explosions in the settlement of Shkardeti, there were explosions on the territory of Poltava. And when talking about yesterday, we got lots of updates from the city of Poltava. More precisely, we got lots of videos that show us the consequences of Russian attack. Some sources are saying, the Russian sources more precisely are saying, that in this video we can see the consequences of work of Ukraine air defense. The Russians are saying that they didn't try and didn't want to attack the city of Poltava because this is a residential area, and the Ukrainians are saying that this is exactly what the Russians did. So it's very difficult to understand who's telling the truth or not when talking just about this event. So something happened in the city of Poltava and almost 50% of the building was reduced to ruins. Zelensky stated that about several tens of people were suffered and were wounded or injured as a result of this attack. But later, during the 1st of February, we got additional report from the settlement that is located in the same region, Poltava region, a little bit to the northwest of the settlement itself. We're talking about this part. As you can see, there are some facilities in this area, so let's discuss every single icon. According to information we have, first data on the results of the morning strikes of the 1st of February. According to the NASA satellite image, the following are currently in epic flames in Ukraine. Yablunovsky gas processing unit near the settlement of Sencha, Mirgorod district, Poltava region, and Yarivka gas field near the settlement of Sencha, Mirgorod district, Poltava region. So the Russians are saying that they attacked the territory of these facilities, and according to information we have, around 45% of the gas. This is it. It is reported that yesterday's Iskandar attack on the Poltava region is a gas production site. This field provides 45% of Ukraine's own gas production. Of course, it's 45. Maybe it's a very big number, but when talking about physical, like meters and some different physical things, it's not so much. Ukraine don't produce lots of gas, but obviously the Ukraine Ukrainians were using this gas probably for very important purposes. Later, we got additional report from the Russian side that the Western companies, Western military companies, were using this region also for production of weapons, and that the Russians, by this Iskander attack, destroyed not just this gas field and these facilities, but also some warehouses, ammo depots, or maybe even military plant of Western investors that Ukrainians were using to support and build munition for their army. So there was a very huge explosion, and later we got reports that Ukraine's State Emergency Service has confirmed media reports about today's earthquake in the Poltava region. The earthquake, measuring 3.67 on the Richter scale, was detected between Poltava and Reshetilovka. The tremors were reportedly recorded at a depth of 3 kilometers. So we understand what was the reason of this, let's say, earthquake. Obviously, this missile strike. So now let's summarize everything. The Russians attack Odessa. Everything is clear with this. The Russians attack this gas field, and most likely it's just my speculation. It may be my projection, but maybe without any connections with the reality. Maybe one of the missiles that were flying in the direction of this gas station and these facilities was brought down by the Ukraine air defense in the vicinity of the city of Poltava, and as a result of this air defense work, some of the buildings on the territory of the settlement were destroyed, basically reduced to ruins. Obviously, all these things led to significant casualties, including among military, among servicemen, and among, of course, civilians. So these are the consequences of Russian attack. And as you know, later on the 1st of February, almost somewhere at midnight, we start receiving reports from the city of Sudzha, so that is located on the territory of Kursk region. In this video, we can see the consequences of attack with some weapon on some building that is located in the central part of the settlement. As you can see, the settlement, the building was completely destroyed or reduced to ruins, so the same thing we saw a minute ago on the territory of Poltava. And this video was provided us by the Ukrainian side, and later Zelensky himself commented, gave his own understanding of the situation, saying that the Russians using the bombs, dropped the bombs on the territory of Sudzha. As a result of Russian attack, this building was destroyed, and Zelensky also stated that there were Russian civilians. Basically, Zelensky stated and blamed the Russians that they, as a result of aviation strike, destroyed the building with the Russian civilians. So those were the words of the president of Ukraine, Zelensky. But later, the Minister of Defense of Russian Federation gave their own explanation of the situation. Let's discuss this in details. On February the 1st, Ukraine armed forces committed another war crime by launching a targeted missile strike on a boarding school in the city of Sudzha. The launch of missiles by the Ukraine armed forces from the Sumy region was recorded by Russian air defense systems. This provocation is aimed at distracting world public opinion from the war crimes of the Kiev regime, which were committed in the village of Ruskaya Porechna in the Kursk region. If you remember, during the previous several days, we were talking a lot about those war crimes. So the Russians are saying that this attack on this building were carried out by the armed forces of Ukraine. And later, the Russian sources published the video. Let's take a look at this video. So this is the video that's according to the Russian sources, where we can see the launches of HIMARS missiles in the direction of Sudzha, which led to significant losses and bloody provocation that led to losses of up to 100 people. And those were very old people, according to information we have. Those who didn't have any possibilities to evacuate from Sudzha towards the mainland. So those were just old people. So this is the situation. Of course, we need more details and updates to understand. And as for the Russians, I believe that they don't care whether the world or anybody else is going to trust them. We expect that during the next 48 hours, the Russians will carry out another missile strike all over the entire territory of Ukraine with the purpose to revenge for this bloody provocation. So let's wait and see. But obviously, the 1st and the 2nd of February would would go in history as a very, very bloody days and bloody points, let's say black points in the special military operation. Now let's discuss the situation on the ground. The sources are saying that the Russians continue their offensive operation in the direction of the settlement of Sverdlikova. The source reported that the Russians have already established complete control over several buildings and parts of the settlement in the northwestern direction. We are waiting that during the next several days the Russians will color this territory completely, and the Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation will confirm this information. On the southern part, we got additional progress on the ground today. According to different mappers, the Russians managed to improve their positions and to take another tree line under complete Russian control. Another forest on the Ukrainian side of the river of Sol was taken and secured by the Russians. Now let's move further. And let's discuss the situation in the northern Kupiansk direction. During the previous 24 hours, according to different resources, the Russians managed to improve their positions. First of all, the Russians managed to restore the road R79 road between the settlement of Zapad and the settlement of Dvorichne. Furthermore, according to different mappers, the Russians managed to take under control the forest to the south of the settlement of Zapne. So as you can see, the Russians are maintaining the line, they're maintaining their foothold, and they're getting more and more ready before additional offensive operation in the western direction. Now let's discuss the situation in the Chasiv Yar direction, where also, according to different mappers, the Russians, as a result of offensive operation, managed to improve their positions, mainly on the southern part of the settlement. The Ukrainians still control up to 40% of the city of Chasiv Yar, but the Russians advance every day and the Ukrainians are losing territories. Now let's discuss the situation around the city of Toretsk. As you can see, we have adjustments on map, and currently probably the biggest, the dynamic, we can see exactly in the territory of the Toretsk agglomeration. For example, this is the situation by the end of the 29th of January of 2025, and somewhere on the 29th of January the Russians began offensive exactly in this area between the railways and the city of Toretsk itself. By the 31st of January we got first reports that the Russians managed to cut this pocket, or at least to cut some part of this pocket. By the 1st of February we got additional changes on the ground and additional territories that were colored in Russian favor, and today by the morning of the 2nd of February we can see that most likely this pocket was completely cut by the Russians. Maybe there are still pockets of resistance from the Ukrainian side, but obviously they were caught in cauldron without any possibilities for evacuation. As for the Pokrovsk direction, after a very long operational pause, we start receiving updates that confirm additional progress on the ground. Different mappers reported that the Russians managed to improve their positions along the railways and to get as close as possible to the city of Pokrovsk from the west. Furthermore, according to pro-Ukrainian sources, the Russians managed to improve their positions in the vicinity of the settlement of Kotlina. As for the Andreevka fortified area direction, there are very heavy clashes on the territory of this pocket. The Russians continue bombing and destroying Ukrainian logistics. According to information we have, during the previous 24 hours or 48 hours, the Ukrainians were trying to build another pontoon bridge in this area with the purpose to improve their logistic, but not even logistic. It's too well late to talk about logistic. The Ukrainians basically were trying to build some pontoon bridges that they can use for evacuation purposes. And the Russians, due to the fact that they controlled the entire situation above the ground, discovered another engineering equipment of the armored forces of Ukraine and destroyed this equipment as a result of several FPV drone attacks. The Ukrainians were trying to build the evacuation bridge between the west and the eastern bank of the river of Sukhe Yali. So for those Ukrainians that are currently blocked on the territory of Ulakli, the Ukrainians were trying to build some plan B, some plan for evacuation, but that attempt failed, and the Russians continue keeping this territory completely blocked and completely without any chances for Ukrainian evacuation. Meanwhile, the Russians are attacking from the south, from the west. The Russians are focused in a assault operation in the direction of Rozliv. Today we continue receiving videos of how the Russians were bombing and attacking the Ukrainian positions in this area. So there are very heavy clashes, but without any changes on the ground. The Ukrainians try to stabilize the situation because they understand that there are too many soldiers in this pocket, and if they don't stabilize the situation, they can lose thousands of Ukrainians. And now let's discuss several political events that took place during the previous 12 hours. And the most important is that the White House wants Ukraine to hold presidential and parliamentary elections. That was stated by Reuters. This was stated by Keith Kellogg, Donald Trump's special representative for Ukraine. The elections could take place before the end of the year. That was said by article. So very important. The question is whether the Ukrainians are planning to make president elections before the negotiation process or after. Anyway, it will take time, and obviously during this period of time the Russians will continue their offensive operation. Furthermore, we have reports from the Western media and Western intelligence services that Kremlin is not planning to end the war. Now the Russians command plans new long-term offensive operations. The Russian military command is planning operations that could last up to 9 months, indicating that Putin does not intend to end the military actions in Ukraine anytime soon, claims the Institute for Study of War, which means that during the maybe negotiations process will start, but not earlier than in November or early December of 2025. And that's it for today. For the short video, Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.